Chapter 6 of Psychopomp Drive. Written by Janeen Leese-Taylor. Read aloud by SkyAsimaru. Chapter 6 Sacrifices. White tiles pressed back against the heavy walls of the square occupation room, their panels as scarred and blemished as a soldier's face. In the center of the room, on a circled rack, were rows and rows of assorted weapons, blades, guns, and things that Finley couldn't begin to describe. In the middle of the remarkable collection was something that resembled a medieval torture device, a contraption with twisting wheels covered in barbs and spikes. Abby leaned against the monstrosity's wooden frame, patting it with a mischievous grin.
"Right, you grab his arms, and I'll get his legs."
Finley laughed. "No torturing the new guy, please," he said. Reichardt adjusted the circular frames on his nose with an air of amusement. "You heard the man, Abby. C'est comporte bien."
"You guys are literally zero fun,"
the blonde woman rebuked, relenting, and moving towards the main console. She ran her hands across the keys, and the screen attached to it flared to life with a low humming noise. On it appeared to be a catalogue of all the different weapons they had at their disposal. Images of each one sped across the screen, along with detailed text regarding their use and care. The Amarini maneuvered to one side, freeing up her previous spot.
"See the little panel there on the left? Place one of your hands on it for me. Palm side down, if you please."
Finley eyed it with suspicion, arching a dark eyebrow in her direction. "Are you playing another prank on me?" he questioned, Blacktail drawing nervous circles at his back. "Am I about to get electrocuted or something?" "I promise you it is perfectly safe," Reichardt reassured him from over one shoulder. "It is a soul reader. We use it to get a look at which of the weapons belongs with you." "Belongs with me?" Finley repeated, confused. "What do you mean?"
It's got something to do with your soul's aura or something. I don't know. Salo would be the one to ask. He usually deals with all the mystical crap."
Abby waved a hand towards the machine.
"All I know is that somewhere in this pile of junk, there's a special weapon that has your name on it."
Finley's silvery hair glistened under the harsh electrical lights as he approached the strange, vibrating device. He extended his hand towards it, resting it gently on the smooth surface of the scanner. Tingles of electricity traveled through his fingers and into his hand when his doll made contact. A long blue line ran from the tips of his fingers towards his wrist, and then back again, as if the device were mapping out every detail of him. "So, what's it saying?" he asked after several moments. Abby tilted her head thoughtfully as she studied the screen.
That was quick. It looks like it's already found a match."
Finley pulled his hand back from the machine, listening to it whir and rattle as it searched through the catalogue of unusual weapons. Rows and rows of sharp blades rotated past, the circular platform twisting in place until it found the one weapon amongst its collection it had been seeking. The selected piece came forward with a pneumatic hiss, glistening under the glow of the lamps. Resting against the board was a long, thick piece of timber, topped with a narrow steel blade. The battle axe created the shape of a T at the top of the wood, one side blunt and flat, and the other forming a sharp curved talon, tipped with a shimmering, dangerous edge. Abby whistled appreciatively at it.
An axe? Never seen one of those come out of it before.
It looks heavy, Rykart noted with a hum. His blue eyes studied his skinnier companion skeptically. His eyes said what his mouth didn't. How on earth are you supposed to lift that? Finley stepped towards it slowly, reaching out a hand to brush against the sturdy handle. The weapon flared to life, fluorescent purple light spreading along its edges and settling on the points where his hands met the wood.
Hello there!
A feminine voice chirped from the back of his mind.
You must be my new partner! How do you do? It has been so long since I've had anyone to talk to!
Finley yanked his hand back like it had been burned. Did that thing just...
The others can't hear me,
the voice continued.
Only you can hear me, 'cause you're special.
The weapons are connected to us through a soul bond, Abby explained. It's sort of like having a roommate, but in your head. It can be a bit strange at first, but you'll soon adjust, Rykart comforted him.
We're going to have so much fun, you and I,
the voice said cheerfully.
Can we go split some skulls now? I'll be all whoosh, kabam, and the bad guys will be all splat, blarg.
Finley wrapped his hands around the hilt and pulled it back from its stand, feeling the weapon's weight in his grasp. It was lighter than he had been expecting, despite the size of the blade. The weight appeared to balance at whatever point he placed his hands, serving as a magical fulcrum. The voice in the back of his mind hummed a joyful tune, like a children's nursery rhyme, as he brought the top of the shimmering blade down towards the ground. The sharp point rested on the tiles, the steel catching the light and directing it back at him in thin, luminous lines. How does it feel? Rykart asked, kneeling down to study the curve of the blade as it cut into the floor. It feels like a really big axe, Finley stated, straining slightly as he hefted the end of it up onto his shoulder. How do I use it? I would suggest swinging it at the bad guys, his taller companion answered flatly, as though the answer were obvious. That's it, Finley replied. What about the exorcism? That dance you did before? It'll be a while before you'll be expected to perform exorcisms on your own, Rykart answered. And just focus on getting a feel of the weapon for now. Over time, it should feel like an extension of yourself, like an additional limb. Moving it will become second nature.
Don't worry,
Abby added, turning back to type into the machine again.
You'll have plenty of time to practice.
The words hung in the air as if suspended between the gaps in the atoms there. They had been said so flippantly, as if they meant nothing at all, and yet they rested in his gut like a hot and heavy weight. In his mind's eye, he could picture Thorn inspecting the weapon, bent over at the waist as her hands clasped together behind her back. Her face was the image of curiosity, and she nodded before straightening, a pleased smile on her face.
I think I like her, she announced. She's sassy.
Finley glanced downwards, catching the reflection of his green eyes in the steel. She's sassy, he whispered, smiling to himself.
Sassy?
The voice echoed.
Oh, I like that!
Hey, Ryke! Abby shouted over the sound of the moving machine parts.
Want to get some practice in while we're here? Maybe show the newbie how it's done.
Rykart reached inside the cover of his dark jacket, pulling out the same 2 daggers he had so gracefully used in the holding room earlier. He wound the sharp blades between his long, slender fingers before gripping them and pulling the red line of ribbon between them taut. When he moved, he slashed the air in a beautiful, impossibly quick pattern. The daggers disappeared and reappeared like cards in the hands of a skilled magician. "Eh oui, I suppose you could use the practice," he mused. "La demonstration, then." He shrugged out of his jacket, folding it neatly on the floor by his feet. Underneath, the man was wearing a buttoned-up white shirt that was tucked into his dark work trousers. The veil of the translucent fabric showed off a hint of the man's musculature beneath it, coiled like a cobra and ready to strike. Abby slipped off her own jacket and tossed it across the room, letting the plum-colored synthetic fabric crumple into a pile at her feet. With another quiet hiss, the machine produced a long, thin bar made of interwoven steel and copper. Each end was barbed like an arrowhead, and she gripped it with both hands, giving it a fond, excitable twirl between her gloved fingers. The metal blurred, creating a circular mirage in the air in front of her. "Let's do this thing, Gramps," she teased, using her spear to vault in Reichardt's direction, as nimble as the cat from which they took their likeness. "Lesson number 1, the dark-haired Reichard began, his tone cool as he glanced back in Finley's direction. "And do not strike impulsively." He let out a huff of amusement and danced out of the way of the attack with ease, rotating at the hip to toss one of his blades in her direction. A long coil of thin, bright ribbon attached it to his finger, the way one might use a yo-yo, and he pulled it around, commanding the weapon's direction with an almost imperceptible movement of his hands. "Lesson 2, he continued, unfazed by his opponent's movements. "Patience will always be rewarded, petit chaton. Let your opponent make mistakes and take advantage." The sharp end of his knife carved a path through the air and clanged as it made contact with Abby's spinning blade. Her bright green eyes flashed with predatory delight as she spied an opening, moving her body to fill the space as she lashed forward. Slowly, then all at once, Reichard navigated from out of the blade's path, grinning at Abby all the while, hands splaying as the ribbon wrapped around her spear. She let out a yelp of surprise as he yanked her off balance, flinging her to one side to topple over her own feet. He retracted both of his daggers as the woman hit the ground, her spear slipping loose from her grip and clattering loudly across the tiles. Finley watched with curiosity as Reichard approached her weapon, kicking the steel bar out of the reach of her searching fingers and up into his waiting hand. He extended it out to her with a shark's smile. "An excellent try," he teased. "Bien fait." Abby pouted as she made a grab for it, tucking it under one arm. She sat up to tighten her ponytail, a few strands having escaped during their encounter. "You cheater! You were telegraphing on purpose!" The first Amarini grinned. "Lesson number 3. Good opponents will not make mistakes often. Force their hand with aggression or traps. Use both and never act predictably." He arched a dark eyebrow at her. Lesson 4. Watch out for feints, and always protect yourself and your weapon above all else.
She rolled her eyes and took the hand he offered her, pulling herself up off the ground. Lesson 5, she groaned. Nobody beats Rykart. The man hummed, the corner of his mouth tilting upwards in a wordless smile. It was clear that he was secretly pleased about lesson number 5. He directed his attention towards the newest spirit in the room, nodding his head towards the battle axe in his hands.
Would you like to give it a try?
Finley shrugged, exhaling a quiet laugh as he felt the weight of the axe shift against his shoulder.
Why not? He answered. What's the worst that could happen? I'm already dead.
Rykart let a smile touch the corners of his mouth again as he gripped his daggers and took position.
A commendable attitude, he praised. So few immortals retain their carpe diemness. It is refreshing.
I can't wait to get started! Slash boom!
Sassy cheered. Finley hit the ground hard, letting out another broken groan as the axe smashed into the tiles to his left. His entire back and sides were bruised. Muscles he didn't even know he had were crying out in protest. Evidently, Sassy enjoyed combat, her voice growing ever more excitable in the back compartments of his mind.
I think I'm all practiced out,
he panted, his chest heaving with exertion. He couldn't remember the last time he had felt so unfit. His body felt heavy, clumsy, and uncoordinated, like a newborn deer or a pair of shoes that needed broken in. It was like all his experiences had been knocked right out of him, like he was starting again from scratch.
New body, new rules, I guess.
Abby tapped the ground with the end of her spear, wrinkling her nose playfully. The paleness of her skin made her freckles really stand out, especially now when she was flushed and glistening with sweat.
Nice job, Finn,
she praised.
You almost hit me that time.
That's a lie, and you know it,
Finley countered with a smile. He knew that she was just being kind. The sharp end of his axe had spent more time embedded in the floor than anywhere near its target. The weapon's weight and his lack thereof were proving hard to consolidate. As he got to his feet again, he found that his shoulders throbbed with dull pain. Sassy was still singing when he moaned again, rubbing the small of his back.
Ugh, I thought death was supposed to be peaceful. If you wanted peace and quiet, Monsieur Evans, you should have gotten on that boat,
Rykart teased, wrapping his blades in their red cloth.
I am afraid the spirits of the in-between do not have the same luxury.
The man hadn't so much as broken a sweat, his circular glasses still in the same place on the top of his nose. Finley reached down to take hold of his axe again, righting himself on shaky legs.
What makes these weapons so special anyway?
He questioned, feeling like he was using the last of his strength just to keep himself upright.
Are they really able to fight off those hollow things?
Abby walked towards the console and returned her spear to its stand, the machine buzzing as it spun back into its place again.
You've heard of a Grim Reaper, haven't you?
Finley nodded, dragging the axe across the floor as it sang a jaunty, if ever so slightly gory, song in the back of his mind.
3 blind mice, 3 blind mice. See how they run, see how they run.
He placed his own hand on the scanner and grunted as he heaved Sassy into place, waving goodbye as he watched the compartment close over and slide back into the central mechanism. A skeleton in a black cloak uses a scythe to harvest the souls of the dead?
You're right on track,
Abby replied, stepping aside to allow Reichardt to access the machine.
It's a bit of a misunderstanding on the human's part. Grim is the name we give to all those that were born in the in-between. It isn't just one specific spirit.
Grims are a type of demigod, creatures created as servants to the immortals that occupy the lands between the living and the dead,
Reichardt clarified, adding his own weapons to the stand next to them.
The weapons that they in turn create are called repels. They are made with materials extracted here in the in-between and fused with water from the 5 rivers.
The circular wooden console began to move, adding the final weapon to its place again. Finley felt his eyes being pulled to each of the different objects that passed, wondering how many other spirits were currently out in the world, fighting against the monsters they called hollows. All this time there had been a war going on right in front of him, and he had never even noticed it.
Once a reaper has been created, it requires a willing soul to become its host, the tall man carried on. Souls are collected from Hades and brought up here to Psychopomp Drive to begin the sealing process. Once inside the weapon, the soul will sleep until its partner, usually another Grim or an Amarini, accesses this machine.
Finley's ears perked up in surprise, and he felt his eyes being drawn to the center of the room again.
You mean that voice that I heard before used to be a living person? Oui,
Reichardt answered.
Like you and I, these souls were also offered the chance to redeem themselves. All of these souls chose to be here. It is the sacrifice that gives the Reaper its true power.
How long have they been here? Finley asked. Reichardt and Abby exchanged a look.
The souls, you mean?
The woman frowned thoughtfully.
I don't really know, Finn. Why?
Turning, he walked quietly back towards the machine, laying his hand down and watching as the wooden panels shifted aside and fell into place again, rebuilding themselves into the formation that he had selected.
What are you doing?
Abby questioned, green eyes following him across the room. All alone in the dark, locked away. Nobody to talk to. Finley couldn't think of anything worse. From the corner of his mind, a conversation he had had with Thorne bubbled up to the surface. She had just been laid off from work, and they'd only really been seeing each other for a few weeks. Not enough time to move in together, to share bills or burdens. But she had called him while she was walking out of the building anyway, begged him to come meet her. He'd swung around to the cafe near their house and picked them both up a hot drink, bringing it with him to the cathedral. He had found her all alone in the church pews, bathed in the warm spring light coming through the stained glass window above her. Thorne sat next to him, her gloved hands wrapped around a steaming mug of hot chocolate and whipped cream. Her reddish-tinged hair was pinned up into 2 neat little buns on her head, the curls running down her face like falling rain. She stroked the recycled plastic container nervously with both thumbs, her eyes red from crying as she spoke to him. "I've started going to therapy," she admitted, her bright eyes focusing on the cup in her hands. "I think all this time I've just been feeling really alone, Finn. It's like I was screaming and no one in the world could hear me." She choked back a quiet sob, her shoulders tensed up by her ears. "I wouldn't wish this feeling on anyone." When the machine came to a stop, he reached out a hand and took hold of the axe, pulling it free and raising it into the air.
"You came back!"
Sassy's voice stretched out to fill the very corners of his mind. Warmth blossomed along his skin like gratitude.
"I want to know more about you," Finley said.
"More about me? And what do you want to know?"
the spirit of the Reaper asked.
"Let's start with an introduction,"
he began, pulling the blade in against his chest.
"My name's Finley. What's yours?"
To be continued in Chapter 7.